Hello Summoners, and welcome back to another ProGuides episode, Best Champion to Main, now on patch 11.3. These champions are all about high performance, with low ban rates that are unlikely to get nerfed in the immediate future. The most reliable picks in the game that are the most worthy of investing time in. So, without further ado, let's hop right into it. Starting things off with the top lane, our first pick is Ornn. With some pretty big hits to almost all bruisers in the top lane, tanks are looking pretty strong, and that means a free lane for Ornn to scale up to his amazing mid to late game. Ornn's Q and W gives him plenty of pushing power, so you're able to shove in waves as often as you want, but you're not just a wave clear bot. If you're looking to just harass, Q can provide pretty decent poke on a low cooldown, but you're also more than capable of going for more aggressive trades as long as you get the timing right on the QE combo. Ornn has always been a relatively strong duelist, but with all the healing items in the game, it's been tough to make the damage stick to targets. But with nerfs across the board to all the items that fall into the category of the top lane, you can more meaningfully throw your weight around. Of course, having a strong laning phase and the ability to duel both tanks and bruisers in a side lane is nice. But Ornn really shines the later the game goes on for two reasons. One, you can provide engage and massive disruption in fights. Two, your passive doesn't come online till pretty far into the game, but once it does, the ability to upgrade your allies' mythics gives some massive power spikes. Just remember, you can only create one masterwork item for your teammates per level, starting at level 14, so make sure to keep farming up in the side lanes. If you're perma-grouping and missing out on all that experience, you'll never give your teammates all you can offer. Ornn is a prime example of what a tank should be. He has a lot of CC, said CC is counterplayable, and he provides unique utility with his passive, and while he does do a decent amount of damage, it's over time, not in an instant burst that lets him assassinate ADCs. I think all that makes him a pretty well balanced champion. Which brings up today's question of the day. Who do you think is the most balanced champion in the game? Let us know your answers in the comments down below. Now, let's go ahead and get back on the topic. Our second pick for top lane is Cho'Gath. Unsurprisingly, a measly 12 damage nerf to his E isn't quite enough to knock him down from the top tier pick. He's gonna have an insanely strong laning phase due to his passive sustain, ability to bully out most of the other melee champions in the role just by outlasting them. How does it feel that he lasts longer than you? He may lack the hard engage that most tanks offer, but he makes up for it in his sticking power, as a combination of knockup, silence, and slow makes it impossible to slip away from him. Frostfire Gauntlet adds even more sticking power, but if the enemy comp has a lot of ranged targets that you'll struggle to get onto in the first place, consider Turbo Chem Tank to close the gap. Once you do get onto the target and you're able to chip them down, your ultimate's massive chunk of true damage helps you easily finish the job. Speaking of your ultimate, during the laning phase, don't be a Cho'Gath that sits on the cooldown for several minutes, waiting to use it on the opponent for a kill. Don't hesitate to practically use it on the minions for the first few casts, so you can pick up a few stacks and be like Kangas, where you can start beefing up. If you couldn't tell from our first few picks, tanks are looking pretty strong this patch, and Sion's no exception. He already has a decent laning phase before, and with overall power being lower on most of the bruisers that he struggled with before, it's even easier for him to at least survive laning phase and stack up his W for free. Aside from his own laning phase, Sion is one of the champions that can roam and initiate fights whenever you have his ultimate, so make the most out of it. You can walk down to mid, but the awkward angle makes it hard to land an ultimate. Instead, the more common and successful strategy is to recall and then look to roam bot with your ultimate. After pulling off the gank, immediately teleport back to the top lane to avoid missing as much CS as you can. Although Sion is considered a tank, it's worth noting that with our build, you'll be able to deal some pretty big damage thanks to Titanic and Sterax. In fact, if you can hit an ADC with a fully ramped ultimate, you can likely kill them with the CC chain if you fully charge a Q immediately after. Just work on landing those flanking ultimates and you'll be piloting the best tank assassin bruiser in the game. If you regularly watch our meta videos, then it shouldn't be surprised to you that Skarner is still around to claim a top spot in the jungle. His quick clear makes power farming a breeze, and gives you time to try to pull off ganks, though your pre-6 ganks are a little bit lackluster. Once you get your ultimate, everything changes, and as long as you're able to reach your target, your ultimate basically guarantees a free kill. Just make sure that you're using it every time it's off cooldown, and farm between ganks so you can stay relevant. One really important thing about Skarner is to always make sure that you're fighting around a spire that you control. The constant mana regeneration means going is pretty much impossible. The attack speed gives you more damage to work with, whether it's during your jungle clear or a duel against another champion, and the movement speed increase is great for chasing down foes, helping you close the gap so you can go ahead and tag them with the blue smite and then drag them away with your ultimate. Aside from the rune choice that we provided, if you're feeling a little bit feisty, spicy, or frisky, you can go ahead and take Conqueror if you're leaning towards dueling and skirmishing, or the ability to make speedy picks with Phase Rush and your ultimate. Next up, we have Warwick. While his initial Claire is a little bit more on the slower side due to his lack of AoE damage, it's extremely healthy, and he's a great duelist, especially in the early game, where the enemy team lacks the damage to burst you down, allowing you to heal back with your passive and Q and turn seemingly impossible fights into an easy win. Even as a Warwick player, the huge amount of healing when low can be surprising, so just be sure to keep autoing and pushing through for the win. Your early ganks are pretty meh, unless the enemy laners are massively overextended. If they do leave themselves open to a gank, come in from an angle that allows you to ferret them back into your team. Remember, when you're using your Q, even if you hold it down, they'll follow you through the target's dashes and jumps, and can even help you follow an opponent that tries to flash over a wall from you. Once you're 6, your ganks are a lot more potent, especially when the enemy is already low, giving you some extra ult range. With a pretty significant buff to her Q on this patch, finally giving it an AP ratio while nerfing many of the other early game junglers that could set their team up to win before you can even get the chance to play the game, AP Shyvana is looking to be a pretty solid pick. While her early ganks are flat out bad, she has one of the quickest jungle clears in the game, but due to her lack of both CC and a gap closer, you can't really force fights on the enemy jungler, so make sure you're pathing to whatever scuttle they can't grab. Take advantage of her high DPS, even early game to solo dragons. Once you get 6, you're a lot more useful in a team fight or skirmish situations, but don't force fights needlessly. Your general game plan should be to power farm and group when it's time to fight around objectives, using her ultimate to blast the other team with fireballs. However, don't be afraid to get into the fray either. Thanks to the aforementioned buffs that she got this patch, AP Shyvana is much more capable of getting into melee range and putting out some serious damage. Shyvana has a relatively low mechanical skill ceiling, meaning that a lot of your performance on the champion comes to macro, decision making, pathing, and vision control. Thankfully, those are some of the easiest concepts to teach. And if you find yourself struggling with more of those strategic departments of League, visit us at ProGuides.com, where our top tier coaches can go ahead and help you level up in all those areas and more. So you can go ahead and make the most of strong picks like this one. Now, taking a look at some mid laners, we'll be starting off with Victor. With this preseason change taking away his Hex core and instead building his upgrades right into his passive, he now essentially has an extra item slot to pick up a situational item depending on the game's needs. Victor may be a scaling champion, but he actually has a pretty decent laning phase as well. Q's shield allows you to shrug off some damage during the trades, while E's damage is practically unavoidable if you can get the Vector aiming down properly. Aside from trading with other champions, Victor's wave clear is some of the best, especially if you evolve his E, allowing you to quickly clear waves and almost always have mid prio. That said, just because you have priority on the first move doesn't mean that you should constantly be roaming. When you're playing a hyperscaling champion like Victor, you don't want to give up minion waves mid just to go for a random coin flip gank to your side lanes that aren't guaranteed to work. Focus on farming up, stacking your passive, and picking up at least the first 2 core items before you can actually really go hard to carry fights. If you prefer a champion that's a little bit stronger early game, maybe Neeko's more your speed. Her Q gives her both poke and wave clear in lane, and with her E, you can go ahead and set up even her junglers for easy kills during ganks. Just be sure that you're shooting it through minions for the empowered root duration. It's okay to be a little bit aggressive with her in lane, just be sure that you're always holding onto her W to make a quick escape if it's their mid that's getting help first. The movement speed and stealth can make ganking Neeko extremely frustrating. Despite Neeko being more of an early game focused pick, that doesn't mean she's bad outside of laning phase. You'll just need to be a little bit more creative. Look for picks by comboing her E, Q, and R to one-shot squishy targets, or look for huge game-winning ultimates to wipe out the enemy team around the dragon or Baron fights. Our last pick for the mid lane is Annie. When it comes to skill floors, Annie is about as easy as it gets thanks to her high range, easy to land spells, and her ability to completely one-shot squishy targets with close to no counterplay. During laning phase, your Q's mana and cooldown refund makes last hitting a breeze, basically giving you training wheels for farming. W can be used to trim down the wave's HP if you really need help getting the minions down to Q last hit range. If the enemy laner is relatively short range, you can look to bully them often, but make sure you're doing so around your stun so they can't trade back. If your opponent has higher range or is just generally sitting back, don't risk taking too much poke to force trades. Instead, keep farming up and either wait for a jungle gank or simply look to roam to get a new wave pushed into their turret. Outside of your laning phase, much of Annie's usefulness comes from her ability to completely delete carries in the game. You'll want to make sure you swap to Red Trinket and invest in control wards to get vision control. Once you have it, just patiently wait in a bush near an objective, and you can easily one-shot one of the enemy carries, or in some perfect scenarios, multiple members of the enemy team. Moving things down into the bot lane, our first pick is Senna. After the new item system launch, Senna players had a pretty rough time finding builds that worked. Lethality items as a whole were broken, but as soon as they were nerfed, she was a bottom of the barrel pick. Now with this new build, she's not just viable, she's pretty darn OP as long as you can scale up and teamfight. Do note that if you find yourself normally having mana problems on Senna during laning phase, you can pick up a tear or even start with it and sit on it for a bit, selling it later rather than building it into a mana mune. Since you won't be getting as many souls from minions you last hit, be sure that you're trading as aggressively as you can during the laning phase, going for quick queue auto trades for instant soul collecting. With an aggressive support, you can even look for more extended trades. And I don't care what people tell you, the longer the better of trades, since you'll be getting your Q reset from constantly autoing. Once you're out of the laning phase, you'll most likely function like any other ADC, but you'll want to maximize the collecting of souls as much as you can. Sometimes this means taking a 5-second detour into the jungle to pick up some souls from wolves or raptors that your jungler is killing. Remember, these souls don't just give you combat stats, the extra range they grant can make or break your ability to teamfight against certain comps, and at a point, you can actually auto-attack Dragon from the other side of the pit. Our second pick for the bot lane carry is Twitch. If you guys watch my stream on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 6 to 8 p.m. PST at twitch.tv/Nathan_ing, you'll know that I hate rats. So even talking about this champion kind of irks me. Just as a disclaimer before we talk about him, the build that we have here is the 80 version of Twitch, but AP Twitch is still viable. In fact, it's doing pretty damn well at the moment in high elo. Both perform similarly, so we just went with the standard build since AP Twitch has a different playstyle altogether. Twitch's laning phase is almost entirely dependent on the support matchup. With an aggressive support in a winning matchup, Twitch can actually trade pretty damn hard in the enemy bot lane, as his damage is pretty decent, even in the first few levels. The commonly held belief that he's a weaker laner only really comes from how easy it is to kill him if you jump on him with a kill lane, but that's no different from any other immobile champion. One quick tip for lane as Twitch, every time you recall, you should always look to roam mid. The ability to get past any wards with your camo means that you can punish opponents that are even the slightest bit overextended, helping to get you to your much needed 2-item power spike as quickly as possible while also tilting the enemy mid laner. Once you do get fed enough to carry fights, positioning is everything. Unstealth in front of the enemy team and you'll be jumped and killed in no time. But if you can go ahead and find a good angle and open up with your ultimate, right when the enemy team is distracted by your team's engage, you can wipe out their entire team in just a few short seconds. While Senna and Twitch have some insane scaling on their side, if you're more into forcing fights, winning lane hard, and snowballing your way to a win, Tristana may be the best pick for you. The combination of a resetting jump and insane burst damage on a fully stacked E lets her get in, burst down the target, and then get right back out to safety. Ideally, you want to get in with an aggressive support like Nautilus or Leona, who can always look to force kills as early as level 2. When you're going aggro in lane, you'll always want to jump onto your target, casting your E on them as soon as you land, or mid-jump actually. Your jump will damage them after the explosive charge is on them, giving you 1 extra stack for free. Even early game, this does a ton of damage, and once you have your ultimate, you can nearly 100 zero squishy targets and any other enchanter supports by yourself. When it comes time to team fighting in the mid game, you'll want to continue being pretty aggressive with your spell usage, but as the game progresses to the later stages, your passive starts to get you higher range, so you won't really likely need a jump anymore. Instead, use it to reposition, with your high range allowing you to auto attack from over walls in team fights. If high range and a resetting jump aren't enough for you to stay safe in fights, your ultimate's knockback can give you yet another tool to stay safe. Between her jump, range, and self-peel, Tristana is possibly the most self-sufficient marksman in the game, making her perfect for ADC mains that are tired of supports that don't know how to peel. Now for our last set of champions, we have our supports, starting off things with Rell. On release, Rell flopped pretty hard, but with a couple of pretty big quality of life changes to her E, and people learning how exactly she works, Rell players are doing much better overall. In lane, don't be too overzealous when it comes to taking fights with the enemy bot lane for free. For one, if you get baited when the jungler is there, you're pretty much guaranteed to die. As soon as you go in, there's no way of really getting out, especially when you consider how slow Rell is when dismounted. 2. If you are being baited into a jungle gank, you'll still want to be careful about just jumping in. If you don't have an outright stronger 2v2 lane, it's easy for the enemy bot lane to turn their focus on your ADC once your CC is down. Keep the matchup in mind and learn when it's your job to peel in lane versus to look for engaging in fights. Once you get ready to 5v5, Rell brings out a ton of CC to the table and is insanely tanky, both on her own and due to her ability to steal resistances from the enemy champions. But don't just think that Rell is a teamfighting god, capable of solo carrying fights with engages. Due to the short range of her W and small radius on her ultimate, Rell functions best as either a counter engage to the enemy team trying to go in, or as a follow-up to another ally leading the charge. Our second favorite pick in the support lane is Alistar. Where Rel is good at long-term disruption and fell short of a solo engager, Alistar is the opposite. He's all about flashing in for an instant combo, and once he lands it, his relatively long cooldowns will leave him waiting around, trying to soak up as much damage as possible while he's able to combo again. In lane, Alistar can honestly be somewhat boring. Due to a small mana pool, you'll have to find yourself even after a couple of combos. You'll want to play the lane patiently, allowing your passive to provide a little bit of sustain as you do. Your playstyle is going to vary depending on how aggressive your ADC can be and what the bot lane matchup is looking like. If you have an aggro ADC like Jhin or Tristana, and you're against something like Kate or Sona, you can look for kills. But if you have a passive ADC like Ezreal, or you're trying to deal with supports that can shut you down every single time you go in, like Morgana or Thresh, feel free to buy Moby Boots and roam to help your solo laners and jungler. Once the laning phase is over, Alistar basically has one real function: flash to make picks or engage fights. If you're a solo engage, or you feel like you just need to get into the enemy team, consider going for Turbo Chem Tank over Solari. And one last note about Alistar. When using his ultimate, remember that you aren't Tryndamere. You should be using it to block as much damage as possible, not when you're at 3% HP. Rounding out our list, we have Zilean. It's about damn time. Zilean is pretty much the ultimate enabler. Between the huge movement speed buff and reviving ultimate, he's perfect for sending a fed carry into battle without the fear of them being shut down. In laning phase, your trading pattern is pretty simple. Look for double bombs for the huge burst of damage that it gives, with the stun allowing your ADC to get in some extra damage on the trade. If you're struggling to hit the double bomb on its own, try to use your E on the opponents first. The slow is so crippling, they might as well be rooted, making it almost impossible to miss a follow-up double bomb. Just be careful that you don't spam too hard, as it can be really easy to go on Zilean. Once you get into team fights, Zilean really comes online. As I said before, he enables his allies to go in with his E, giving them amazing synergy with melee carries like Hecarim and Master Yi. On top of that, his double bomb serves as an easy follow-up to engage from champions like Malphite to help layer CCs. One thing that you can look for on Zilean is enemies that are either in stasis or in a revived state from something like GA. For example, if the enemy bard ults 2 or 3 of his own teammates and you double bomb one of them while they're in stasis, the second the stasis ends, the enemy will instantly pick up the double bombs, instantly stunning and nuking themselves along with their nearby allies. And that's going to be all for our top 3 champs in main on 11.3. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure you sub so you never miss out on our meta guides. Remember to let us know what champion you think has the most balanced game design in the comments. And one last thing, don't forget to check out our Discord in the description down below. I can't wait to see you on the next video, and with all that being said, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.